The topic I chose to do my final presentation on is the overall wellness of college athletes, effective physical activity, and competitive sport on the brain. I felt like it was important to address the idea of overall wellness because it incorporates the biological aspects, the psychological aspects, and the physical aspects of personal well-being and overall wellness. So we first need to start by addressing the pre-existing statistics on mental health that were conducted by the National Institute of Mental Health. So the first one we have here is that 1 in 5 American people have a mental health disorder. These are categorized in 2 different ways. The first one being an AMI, so this is a general term. These are for your very mild cases of depression, of anxiety, PTSD. And then we have serious mental illness, and SMI. So this is a mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder resulting in serious functional impairment, which limits major life activities. So this is going to be your schizophrenia, autism, and severe bipolar disorder, severe depression, severe anxiety. Additionally, of that 20% of the 1 in 5, nearly 50% are ages 13 through 18. These are the middle and high schoolers who are now going to be transitioning into their college and career with this precedent of mental illness, which actually leads me to my next slide. This is the mental health of American students, more specifically American college students. So currently in the US, there are 20 million enrolled college students, and 1 in 4 college students suffer a mental health issue. 25% of this 20 million is 5 million students, and the 3 most common mental health issues that are reported by students are anxiety, depression, and feelings of extreme stress. So furthermore, to specify my demographic and to fully understand the relationship between student athletes and non-athletes and their approach to their mental health issues, I needed to specify the amount of NCAA student athletes. So currently there are 460,000 NCAA Division I through Division III student athletes. So this is actually a very, very low percentage of all enrolled college students. This is 0.023%, which is about 23 athletes per 1,000 college students. Additionally, I have added that very little will leave collegiate athletics going pro, which asks the question, why such risk for such little reward? We will actually touch on that in a little bit later, but be sure to keep that in the back of your mind. Furthermore, 10 to 15% of NCAA student athletes experience issues of mental health to receive psychological services. So this is about 46,000 to 69,000 of the NCAA college athletes, and this is about 345 students per 1 million students. So this percentage of student athletes with mental health disorders is very, very low, which leads to the question, what is the reason? What is this reason for the drastic difference of mental health disorders between student athletes and non-student athletes? So I wanted to begin by talking about self-reported factors in college decision-making. So here we have a comparison between our student athletes and our non-student athletes. With our student athletes, the choice of college and university is primarily based on the athletic program advantages. So this is athletic scholarships, academic scholarships, potentially a starting position, strength of the program, and maybe feeling motivated to represent the school in a well manner. Additionally, student athletes felt like they had time to develop good time management skills, so they were able to find this balance between sport, class jobs, other extracurriculars like clubs, and also free time to enjoy with friends. Also, with student athletes, they found that being on a college team, it was fairly easy to find good, reliable friends, as teammates usually tend to share similar morals, personal values, and experiences within the sport and outside of sport. Our non-student athletes usually take a choice in college and university based on an academic or career plan. So this could be a specific major, again, maybe an academic scholarship similar to the student athletes, maybe a sense of community or the location of campus. Non-student athletes usually choose to have more time, some more free time rather than develop these good time management skills. They can use this free time to work, participate in extracurriculars, maybe practice self-care, and engage in their academics. Our non-student athletes also are introduced to a wide variety of people. I have some examples. So maybe your neighbors in your dorm building, a girl you met in the bathroom one day, and classmates that you see every day. I then wanted to address the main stressors of student athletes. So they fall into two categories mainly. Stressors associated with sports participation and stressors associated with academic achievement. So here we have some more examples. Stressors associated with sports participation include pressure to win, excessive anxiety, which is also a problem in this age group and within college students, dissatisfaction of performance, and overall a loss of identity. Which also brings up the question again, why such a risk for such little reward? Identity is something that we are going to continue to talk about. The stressors associated with academic achievement are a little bit more complex. Some examples include uncertainty about a declared major, which actually leads to this occurrence called academic clustering, where student athletes tend to go to the same major as other student athletes to avoid feelings of guilt, indecision, maybe some instability, ultimately to avoid that loss of identity. There's also pressure to maintain good grades, a fear of losing control, and many athletes do not have career-based goals as they were brought up to create goals around their sport. Non-student athletes actually have some more general stressors. So similarly to the athletes, they experience some changes in lifestyle. This is, the academic portion. Right here we have the increased workload, some new responsibilities as, jobs, clubs, or class. And non-student athletes actually tend to have stressors related to their love life and interpersonal connections more than the student athletes do. So here we have kind of an overlook on what we had just discussed. So here we have a table that represents the 5 major things that college students participate in. So first we have classes and homework. This is our schoolwork, what we're in college to do. So both athletes and non-athletes participate in that. Employment, a majority of athletes also are employed, same with non-athletes. Participation in clubs, organizations, and nonprofit, these extracurriculars that are not centered around sport, athletes and non-athletes tend to incorporate themselves in that way. Personal enjoyment, and that's our free time. And then we have intercollegiate sport and competitive physical activity. Here we see a difference. The athlete has a check mark and the non-athlete does not. So let's go over a couple things that we know this far. We know that approximately 5 million college students suffer from a mental health condition. We know that student athletes with mental health issues are only a very small percentage of that 5 million. And we know that athletes and non-athletes share a similar college experience with each other to feelings of stress. So what is the distinguishing factor among the two? 2 things: constant physical activity that comes with competitive intercollegiate sport and an athletic identity from competitive sport. Biological effects of physical activity are pretty apparent. Many people know them. So we're going to suggest that physical activity is at least 30 minutes of aerobic or resistance activity daily, 3 times a week, calculating to approximately 1,000 kcals. So this can be done by walking, running, competitive sport like we're talking about, recreational sport, biking, or swimming. Physical activity assists pre-existing conditions. Here we see that there's a 50% reduction in symptoms of cardiovascular disease, a 6% decrease in incidences of type 2 diabetes, and here we have overall fitness as well. So athletes that are participating in high impact activity, this is our aerobic activity, running, things that are very physical, they tend to have an increase in the density of their bone mineral. Regular physical activity improves the musculoskeletal function, which supports the movement of the body. And it also reduces the risk of chronic disease and disability later on in life. And it promotes the healthy function of the body's central nervous system. And here we have two kind of bases for the function of the nervous system. So we have the nature of play. The nature of play is basically that the body is biologically based on physical activity. Therefore, there is this need to play to regulate the central nervous system. There's this need to expend your energy in order to keep regulation in your body so it's not overworked or underworked. Additionally, the hormone leptin for energy expenditure is very important. It's a hormone that gets released to the hypothalamus in the brain, which regulates the autonomic nervous system, which is part of our central nervous system. And here we have a little diagram. We have what the food is intaking. The leptin is released into the hypothalamus, which eventually changes our behavior, which is an increase in food intake and further energy expended. The importance of the central nervous system is very basic. So here we have the brain, we have the cerebellum, and we have the spinal cord. These are the three main parts. So if one part is not working, if the spinal cord cannot carry out an organ function, if the cerebellum is not getting enough activity to regulate this muscular activity, like the musculoskeletal function that we had talked about earlier, and if the brain is not accurately processing the information, things get messy. If the CNS is not working at its peak potential, muscular and motor functions do not fully work. You become weak, your body starts to shut down. Some psychological effects of physical activity fall into some main categories as well. So there's hormone-based psychological effects. These are the two main that are constantly talked about when addressing physical activity and mental health. So exercise and physical activity reduce levels of adrenaline and cortisol, which are the stress hormones released in our body, and it stimulates the production of endorphins. So here we have this comparison between a brain that has been sitting quietly for about 20 minutes and then a brain that had been walking outside for 20 minutes. So we can see that there's much more activity in the brain, therefore strengthening the brain. So there's also a change of perception, thought, and behavior. So this is improved self-image, boosted confidence, an increased sense of pride, which are all related to the prefrontal cortex, which is highlighted right here. And decision-making and goal-setting behaviors become more apparent. You're strengthening the cerebrum, and therefore you are becoming a more confident, well self-imaged athlete. So there's also some psychological benefits of participating in collegiate sport despite the physical activity. So this is actually your athletic identity. Many athletes fall into these three kind of characteristics when talking about sport. So this is teamwork, leadership, and perseverance. These senses of teamwork and the sense of leadership and the sense of perseverance stimulates the hippocampus, which influences future behavior, right? So this leads us to mental toughness because of this physical activity and competitive sports lessons that you learned. Mental toughness actually alters your response to stress. Oh my fucking God, I was literally so close. I'll just cut it.